Okay, picture this. You're watching a classic made-for-TV holiday movie. You know the one. The male lead is dating a high-powered, tightly wound, unapologetically ambitious city woman. We literally all know this character, right? She's the quote-unquote villain he absolutely has to dump before he can run off and fall in love with the quirky small-town baker. You know, the one who perpetually wears oversized sweaters that swallow her whole. But what happens if that evil big city ex-girlfriend actually gets her own romance novel?
Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we are diving deep into Emily Henry's smash hit 2022 novel, Book Lovers. And let me tell you, this is definitely not your standard beach read. It's a hilarious, razor-sharp meta-commentary that mercilessly roasts the romance genre's biggest cliches, all while delivering an absolutely perfect love story of its own. So let's break down exactly how Henry pulls off this brilliant trope takedown.
To get why this works, we really have to understand our protagonist, Nora Steffens. Nora is, well, she's definitely not your typical romance heroine. She doesn't own a failing, debt-ridden small-town bakery, and she absolutely doesn't walk around with flour adorably smudged on her nose. Instead, she is a cutthroat, Peloton-obsessed literary agent in New York City. She literally calls herself a shark. And the best part? She completely accepts her role in life as the woman men date right before finding their true small-town soulmates. She leans into that villain persona because, frankly, it works for her career and it keeps her safe.
But of course, every romance needs a change of scenery, right? Enter Nora's younger, pregnant sister, Libby. Libby completely drags Nora away from her beloved city for a month-long August vacation to Sunshine Falls, North Carolina. And let me tell you, Sunshine Falls is a town straight out of central casting for a cheesy, mass-produced romance movie. It's actually the setting of a wildly successful novel by one of Nora's clients. And Libby? She is determined to force Nora into a classic, heavily cliched small-town transformation.
Libby even creates a literal small-town rom-com bucket list for Nora. She fully expects her sister to, meet a sexy lumberjack, miraculously save a struggling local business, aggressively wear flannel, and maybe bump into a handsome doctor. It's so funny because the idea that a few weeks in the country, surrounded by folks who act like they've never seen a cell phone, is supposed to magically cure Nora of her shark-like ambition is just totally ridiculous. Henry is aggressively roasting these cliches right out of the gate.
Because, as you might guess, the reality of Sunshine Falls is very different for Nora. Instead of having some serendipitous meet-cute with a rugged local bartender, who does she keep bumping into? Charlie Lastra. He is a brooding, acerbic, permanently unimpressed book editor from New York. In fact, he's her bitter work nemesis. He's back in his hometown temporarily to help his family, and he is the exact opposite of the sunny, emotionally available small-town hero Libby had in mind.
Emily Henry totally flips the script here. Think about the ridiculous romance expectations for a trip like this. A relaxing retreat, slowing down, marveling at the simple life. But in reality, Nora and Charlie, these two massive city workaholics, end up in forced proximity, co-editing a book for a high-maintenance author named Dusty Fielding. They are literally bringing their big city stress and witty, cutthroat banter right into this quiet country town. They don't adopt the slow-paced country life at all. They just do New York in North Carolina.
But look, this story isn't just a spoof. It actually has some serious thematic depth. Emily Henry herself said about Nora, she needs to heal and she needs to grow, but she doesn't need to change who she fundamentally is. I really want you to think about that for a second. Why is it that a career-driven, independent woman is always expected to magically change her core identity to find happiness or love? Henry uses this entire setup to argue that ambition and sharpness aren't flaws that need to be cured by moving to a town with one traffic light.
So why exactly is Nora such a shark? It's not because she's cold-hearted. It's actually born from deep trauma and grief. When their single mother passed away, Nora was forced to step up. She took charge, grew up way too fast, and sacrificed everything, her own dreams, her own comfort, just to protect and provide for Libby. That tough exterior, it's armor. It's exactly how she survived and kept her sister safe when their world completely fell apart.
Which leads us to one of the most pivotal and honestly moving scenes in the book. Under immense pressure and the crushing weight of her own lifelong sacrifices, Nora finally cracks. She has a panic attack. And who finds her? Charlie. But instead of judging her or getting weirded out, Charlie steps up. In this incredibly vulnerable moment, he helps ground her, and he actually opens up about his own complicated family history, his difficult relationship with his parents, and his own deep-seated feelings of being a disappointment.
And this brilliantly illustrates why these two are so perfect for each other.
Charlie tells her, "I've never met anyone who cares as much as you do." Do you know how many people would kill for someone like that in their lives? It is just such a beautiful moment of validation. Charlie doesn't want to fix Nora. He doesn't want to soften her hedges. He deeply admires the exact relentless, caretaking, shark-like traits that Nora has spent her whole life hating about herself. He sees her armor for what it really is, an act of profound love.
This brings us to a word we hear all the time in relationships: compromise. Usually, it means finding a middle ground, right? But for Nora, her definition of compromise has become entirely one-sided. For her, it's a balance of concessions, where she makes all the concessions. Because of her past trauma, she truly believes keeping her sister safe means always putting herself last, even sacrificing her long-held dream of becoming an editor in New York City. She is completely ready to give it all up again for Libby.
But hold on, because here comes the Sunshine Falls plot twist. Family obligations and romantic desires suddenly collide. It turns out Charlie has to stay in North Carolina indefinitely to help his ailing father run the family bookstore, so a long-distance relationship seems pretty impossible. But the real twist? Libby reveals she actually wants to move to Sunshine Falls permanently. The whole trip was this elaborate setup to convince Nora to move there with her. But Libby doesn't want Nora's sacrifices anymore. She pushes Nora to finally go back to New York and pursue her own dream of being an editor.
Notice the stark contrast in the ending here. A typical romance ending absolutely demands the woman abandon her big city career for love and a quiet, simple life making like artisanal jams. The book lover's ending completely subverts this. Nora goes back to New York, she gets her dream editor job, she keeps her edge, her ambition, and her city apartment. Henry proves that you don't need a small town to find happiness or healing. You can find it exactly where you belong.
And of course, Emily Henry perfectly sticks the landing for a happily ever after, but purely on her own terms. The August trip ends, and Nora goes back to the city. Months pass. Charlie's father improves. Soon after, Libby actually steps in and takes over managing the bookstore, which frees Charlie from his obligations. And finally, Charlie moves back to New York City to propose to Nora. It's an absolute triumph. It's an ending that doesn't force the heroine to shrink herself or abandon her ambition for a man.
Okay, before we wrap up, let's dive into some super exciting real-world news, because a story this good isn't just staying on the page. Tango Entertainment has acquired the rights to adapt Book Lovers into a feature film. The script is being penned by Sarah Heyward, who you might know from her incredible work on hit shows like Girls and Modern Love. Plus, Emily Henry is attached as an executive producer, so we know this adaptation is in fantastic hands. But naturally, the internet is already buzzing with the most important question: who in the world is going to play Charlie Lastra? Rumors absolutely exploded after a recent GQ photo shoot featuring the new Superman himself, David Cornsweet, wearing a very Charlie-esque knit sweater. And the best part, Emily Henry actually endorsed the idea online. She said she's 100% in and even followed him on Instagram. The fan casts are going wild, and honestly, the idea of Superman playing our brooding, emotionally constipated editor is just perfection.
So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a question to ponder. Emily Henry took the tired, city slicker humbled by a small town trope and completely turned it on its head to give a villain her own love story. If you could rewrite the ending of your favorite romance cliché, what would it be? Think about the stories we just blindly accept and how much more interesting they could be if we let the characters stay true to who they really are. Let that sink in and keep challenging those tropes.